Come on in. Welcome to Idled Out, where we talk all things Survivor. My name is Luke, and today we're taking a look back at my Survivor 49 preseason cast analysis. All throughout the new era, I've gone through all of the preseason press for every single player to give you my expert analysis on each of them, from how they'll play to who they'll align with to what kind of edit they'll receive. As I go through all 18 players, I also like to hand out an award for each of them. Most likely to win, most likely to be the first out. You get the idea. It's high school superlatives, Survivor style. Most people stop there, leaving their bad takes and their obviously spoiled good takes in the past. Not here. We hold ourselves accountable on this channel. At the end of each season, I go back and look at my initial cast assessment to examine how right and wrong I was. As we look back at the cast assessment, I like to award myself a point for my analysis of each player. I'll give a full point for a prediction that was more or less accurate, half a point for times I got some things right and some things wrong, and 0 points for when I was way off the mark. As always, I'll be shooting for a total of 9 points out of 18 possible. We'll be going in elimination order, so obviously this will have major spoilers for Survivor 49. It's my favorite video of the year, so let's get into it. Let's start with our first boot, Nicole Mazzulo, who I said was most likely to win or be the first person out. I give this award out for high variance players where there's major potential for an early exit, but if they can survive those deadly early tribals, they can go the distance. And also, it basically gives me a pocket second first boot and winner pick. Well, I was right on the first boot part, but was I right on the could win part? On paper, I like Nicole's chances. She wants to be Shambo in the front, Boston Rob in the back, and let her quirky exterior hide a deadly strategic player. She wants to lie, she wants to manipulate, she loves drama. If she gets voted out, she wants to blow up the game on her way out the door. And on the jury, she says she will refuse to vote for anyone honest. For my money, every word of that was better than the last, but I fear she's not going to be able to conceal the style of game she wants to play, and could come out too hot against the wrong player and pay the price for it. That said, if this tribe isn't going to tribal council, especially in the first few rounds, Nicole's game could gain some steam. I think with time she could win over your Annies and your Alexes and your Jeremiahs and get a little momentum. I feel like she could be very deadly at the merge. Like, she'd be the person, when they're sitting around at the merge feast and no one wants to say anything, to actually throw out a name. Overall, it can go either way on Nicole for me. I am leaning on the earlier boot side of things, unfortunately, which they'd be wise to do. If they let her get far, she can win it. Man, Nicole was all preseason bark. I was really excited for this sort of take no prisoners style of game she was going to run. Then she flubbed the challenge, barfed in her hand, and was easy pickings for a tribe that would soon be circling the drain. I probably should have been able to read that Nicole was in over her head, but I'm still going half a point on this one because she was legitimately the first boot. That's never happened to me before, and I'm taking my wins where I can. Let's continue to knock these Kella players out with our second boot, Annie Davis, who I said was going to be somebody's sidekick. I sort of envisioned Annie as a kooky Sue type to Jake or Sophie's Gabe, a personality hire who was going to struggle socially but ultimately serve as a pocket extra vote for bigger players on the tribe. Here's what I originally said about Annie. At first glance, with the pink hair and the literal glitter in her eyes, you'd think Annie is like a kooky Debbie type. And she's a bit kooky, but honestly much more grounded than I expected. I don't know, I feel like this is a bad tribe draw for her. She has a very, very specific vibe. Like, she says she's gonna hide the advantages she finds in her prison wallet. You're either on board or you're not. I am, but I'm not sure this is the sort of tribe that will appreciate such comedy gold, and I fear that all the people who Annie could work with are elsewhere. Her and Nicole seem like possible allies, but I am worried. On the other hand, Annie describes herself as someone who is overly trusting and who will jump at a connection of any kind. If she attaches herself to a power player like a Jake or a Sophie early on, she could be good for a while. That said, she wants to risk her vote for advantages, so if her usefulness to her allies dries up early, she could be an early boot. But I think there's an even higher possibility that she's a +1 to the power players. I'll go 0 points on this one. Annie's only allies ever existed for like a day. She was chronically out of the loop, and then was another easy boot for the Disaster Tribe. She wasn't a sidekick, she was just kicked to the side. Next, let's look at our third boot via Snakebite, Jake Latimer, who I said was most likely to be the season's godfather. The vision was clear. Jake was going to be a super loyal, iron grip style player who makes his alliance early, plans to ride that to the end, and we all hope and pray that he just doesn't have the numbers at some point. And, yeah, Jake stole slightly more shoes than I expected, but that's what would have happened. Here's what I said about Jake. If anyone's gonna pound the loyalty drum, it's him. But he's a lot more likable than that would suggest. Jake reminds me a lot of Joe from last season, a person he compares himself to directly. Joe took the substance and Jake plopped out. Big muscles, big heart, the kind of guy who is gonna find his group and ride that out to the end of the game. If you're in the group, you're in. If you're out, see you later. Jake's game plan is just not blowing me away. He wants to be loyal, stay loyal, and get to the end and say, look how loyal I was. Not sure it's a winning strategy 49 seasons in, but I could see a Joe-esque trajectory for Jake where he flies through pre-merge, builds his army, and is a dangerous player to take a shot at. Thankfully, even potential allies on this tribe, like Alex and Sophie, are chronically eager to overplay, so I don't think we're in for a strong 5 2.0. Tops out at mid-jury and votes for whoever says the word loyalty the most at Final Tribal. Jake literally made a ride or die alliance with Alex like 5 seconds after they hit the beach. While we've no way of knowing for sure, it seems fairly apparent to me that in a snake-free world, Jake makes a swap, pledges loyalty to whatever his post-swap group is, then he rides that alliance until he's turned on once he doesn't have immunity. Maybe he would have stolen Savannah's shoes and blamed Jawan or something, but for me, all signs point to Jake's trajectory being what I more or less expected. Full point. God, this feels like a regular cast analysis, the way we're just grinding through one original tribe. Let's move on to Jeremiah Ng, who I said was most likely to get a rude awakening in Survivor. In Jeremiah, I saw a player who was coming into Survivor overconfident who would be humbled quickly. And nothing is more humbling than being on the fail tribe. Here's how I knew Jeremiah was not long for this game. Jeremiah was hit by a car on his way to the airport to go be on Survivor 49. That may have foretold how Survivor is going to go for him. Jeremiah seems like so much fun, but I think Survivor is going to run him over and back up and do it again. I think the elements are going to get to Jeremiah very quickly, but more importantly, I just don't think he's prepared himself for the possibility of failure. He's really into tarot and astrology and all that. He manifested himself getting on Survivor, and I get the sense that he feels maybe invulnerable going into the game. He's eager to vote off the muscle and make his tribe unable to win a comp. He wants to go on a journey because he thinks it will just magically go right for him. He just hasn't really considered a world where things don't go perfectly for him. That said, pre-game, he was obsessed with Sophie B, who is on his tribe, so he may have a built-in bestie right there. And even though he's targeting him pre-game, I could actually see a Jake and Jeremiah alliance, which would be a fun rerun of Jonathan and Omer. So my prediction for Jeremiah isn't all doom and gloom, but I do think more than likely the car was trying to tell him something, and though that car merged right into him, he won't be making the Survivor merge. I actually don't think Jeremiah was as overconfident as I originally thought, but he was certainly humbled and hard. The Jeremiah of episode 1 and the Jeremiah of episode 3 are very different people. I also predicted the brief Jeremiah and Sophie duo. Remember that? Anyone? As well as his early ouster, so I'm going to hesitantly go with a full point on Jeremiah here. Survivor ran him over, backed up, and did it again, but to be fair, that happened to basically the rest of his tribe too. Finally, let's get out of Kella and talk about our first Hina member to leave the game, Matt Williams, a guy I said who was most likely to be our Broccoli Brad, Jelinski-style, iconic pre-merge meme player. I got pre-merge right, but an icon, here's why I thought that. Every new era season needs one. Jelinski, Broccoli Brad, and now, Matt. Matt is a casting throwback in the best possible way. Take 1 part Rupert, mix it with a healthy dose of Mike Barassi, throw in a dash of Jimmy T, and sprinkle it with some Dan Foley, and here you go. My dream player. This guy will not be saying no to a journey or risking his vote. He laughs at the idea, and a smart player would pick him up as a loyal +1. But man, I don't know if there's a good tribe draw for Matt, but I feel like this isn't a great one. Who does he work with here? Steven is his best bet as an ally, I think, but he's like 20 years older than half the tribe and 30 years older than the other half. He's like your dad's fun, but kind of strange friend. And so I could see some relatability issues stemming from that for Matt. I want to be wrong so bad, but unfortunately, I'm just not seeing an easy path to the merge for Matt, short of this tribe winning nearly every challenge. He's going to be a workhorse at camp. His old man strength will probably do some work in the challenges, and he's going to drop some all-time confessionals along the way. But around episode 3 or 4, he'll simply be out of runway and possibly out of a vote, too. Let's go half a point for Matt. He wasn't as weirdly, obnoxiously lovable as, say, Brad, but he had his entertaining moments and was more or less this type of character, just like the diet version. However, I'm deducting half a point because I expected Matt to really struggle on his original tribe, but he was actually in the power before he got swap screwed. But can you blame me? White guy with dreads doesn't exactly scream, can read a room. Let's move on to our next Hina player to exit Survivor 49, Jason Truel, who I said was most likely to be underestimated. I thought Jason would have a quiet, killer instinct for this game. Instead, he was just quiet. Here's what I originally said about Jason pre-season. This cast is going to overlook Jason, and that will be to their detriment. Jason's just so likable. He's got this eagerness and openness and vulnerability that makes him really fun to watch, but not irritating. He compares himself favorably to Rachel, which I see, at least in terms of gameplay. He's going to be the goofy guy just chillin' who is playing a killer game in secret. He is possibly the least threatening thing you can be in life, which is a semi-pro Smash Bros player. Not even Smash Bros, a Smash Bros mod. Okay, I guess Smash players are threats to sticks of deodorant, but the point stands. He's got a great head for the game that no one will see coming, though there is a chance the geeky eagerness isn't as endearing to the rest of Hina as it is to me. There's a Cochrane in Karamoan upside, but there's a Cochrane in South Pacific downside. Generally, though, I'm fairly high on Jason, and I could see him wave dashing to the end game. This is kind of a tough one to grade for me, but I'm gonna go 0 points for this. I just expected a lot more out of Jason in terms of strategy. Like the player I was talking about above could have wormed his way out of his bad position post-swap, instead of whatever happened there with Jason. He didn't even play his shot in the dark. I enjoyed hearing Jason say the words Project M on national TV, but honestly, Jason wasn't underestimated. He was properly estimated. Next, let's look at our first Uli player to leave the game, and my pick for first boot, Shannon Fairweather. In Shannon, I saw the ultimate version of the New Age spiritualism archetype, Cassidy and Kendra on steroids, or at least steroid-scented incense. Here's why I thought Shannon was going to manifest herself right out of the game. Unfortunately, I've looked into the crystal ball, and I'm not seeing a long stay for Shannon. Look, I know this is rich coming from a guy with a YouTube channel, but I get the sense that Shannon likes to talk and likes to hear herself speak. Mike could barely get a word in edgewise in these interviews, and he's a professional podcaster. Shannon seems like a fun character, but I'm just not sure that her vibe is going to be her tribe's vibe. She's all chakras and manifesting vibes and star charts, and I really do not think people like Jawan or Nate are going to be on that wavelength at all. Sage is probably her best bet as an ally, and even Sage strikes me as a different type of spiritual. Overall, I'm really struggling to see Shannon's place in this tribe. I think in a different cast, like maybe Survivor 46, she might have had some runway, but here on Survivor 49 on the Uli tribe, all the AI prompts in the world aren't going to save Shannon from being an easy first boot when Uli inevitably heads to Tribal Council. Oh man, I was so certain I knew what the Uli dynamics would be, and I was so wrong. Shannon was in the power before her swap screw, and I thought Shannon would be allies with Sage, not whatever bizarre relationship they had there. Best frenemies? I did guess that she'd be a bit of a yapper, but I don't think you need a crystal ball to see that. No points. Let's move on to our merge boot, Nate Moore, who I said was going to be too nice for Survivor. For me, Nate read as a bit of an old school Survivor tribe dad. Your Joe Del Campo style nice guy with a big heart but no game, beyond being able to adapt to the younger players and serve as their surrogate parent. And I'll say right up front that I really underestimated Nate. I enjoyed watching him play so passionately and so hard, and I was disappointed he went so early. This is what I originally said about Nate. I came into this preseason skeptical of Nate and left adoring him. Nate's going to be beloved on and off the island. He's a big-time family man and low-key funny. He exudes warmth, and he is probably one of the biggest fans on the season. Despite that, though, he's probably going to be more of a social player. Nate just feels very socially adaptable to me, and he'll just fall into whatever role his tribe needs him to be. The good news for him is that he practically has an ally built into this tribe from the get-go. He and Jawan have so much in common, and their personalities just seem so compatible that I'd be shocked if they weren't day one ride or dies. But Nate's friendly demeanor is such a double-edged sword for me. I just don't think he has the killer instinct to win. At Final Tribal, will Nate have it in him to tear down the games of the people he's sitting next to? Is Nate cold-blooded enough to pull off a blindside on his closest friends? I don't know. He'll make the jury, but just like the MCU after Infinity War, his game will eventually run out of steam. As expected, Nate was a great social player, able to adapt to a younger tribe and lead them. And then he landed about where I expected as the tribe dad. But his strategy was far more cold-blooded than I thought, and he wasn't exactly buddies with Jawan, so I think half a point is pretty fair for Nate here. I nailed his social game, but mistook his passion for the game as complacency, when he was anything but. Bring this guy back. Next, let's look at Michelle MC Chukwujekwu, who I said was most likely to make the merge. MC is the kind of player who makes the merge 9 times out of 10. She punched her ticket to the merge the second she walked on the beach, and she has a relatively easy road in the first half of the game and a rocky road in the second. Here's how I knew MC was going to be wearing that merge buff, but not for long. Now, you look at MC and you wonder where things can go wrong. Physical beast, super chill and down-to-earth vibes, and she's on a tribe which has a ton of built-in allies for her. Jason is the other alternate turned contestant, and there's a link right there. Sophie was an alternate on another season, so there's another alternate connection. Her and Kristina seem like they would complement each other very well, so I'd fully expect them to align too. If I have any concerns for MC, it's that there may be some alternate-induced giddiness to overplay. I kind of feel like there is a world where she goes in playing like she's playing with house money and goes a little too big with her gameplay. She wants the idols and advantages, and she doesn't seem like she's going to be shy about it. Overall, though, I feel like MC is going to be insulated well enough with allies. I feel like she'll be great at the give and take of information exchange in the game, and her tribe's going to need her in the pre-merge physically. Look at her to be close to the power structure of this tribe with a bullseye on her back as soon as the tribes come together. Bingo! MC flew through the early game, had tons of allies on Hina, and literally did not attend Tribal till episode 7, where she came in hot with an idol and in the Hina majority. Then she became a target instantly after overplaying her hand at the split Tribal. Easy, full point. Let's move along to the first of 2 players to make it out of Kella alive, Alex Moore, who I said was going to be too diplomatic. Considering his overly diplomatic nature led to his downfall, I'd say I got that right, but what else did I say about Alex? Alex is here for a good time, not a long time. He wants to play a devious, balls-to-the-wall game, and his tribe is going to catch on almost instantly. The thing that struck me about Alex is that he seems very transparently political. Alex has been flashing this evil smile all over pregame Ponderosa, and it's getting him noticed. And I think there's a world where he just tells people what they want to hear too much. Add on to that a proclivity to come into the game guns blazing with alliances, idols, journeys, and we've got a recipe for early game disaster. If Alex can slow roll his game, focus on his relationships, and not people please from one side of his mouth and gossip out the other, he can do great in this game. there is Sam Phelan upside, but I think he may be in for a rude awakening sooner rather than later. Alex will get his full Survivor experience, then he may possibly speedrun it. Pre-merger with Gabe-style mid-merge wannabe mastermind upside. Alex was definitely not as smug as I thought he'd be, nor was he an early boot, but come on. I saw that this guy would be the ultimate people pleaser, an overly political fence sitter, and that it would be his downfall. I'll be diplomatic and go half a point on Alex. Let's move on to our next boot, Jawan Pitts, who I said was most likely to be too likable. I saw Jawan as a lovable, Christian-style player who is really liked by his tribe pre-merge, has a pretty easy time getting by on good vibes alone, and who is simply unable to contain his lovable threat level down the stretch. Here's why I thought that. If Jawan lasts, he's going to be a big fan favorite. He is going to be vulnerable with people to win them over, and he wants an ally to sort of play Batman to his Robin, or as it used to be known in the Survivor world, the JT to his Steven. But that leads me to my concerns. Jawan is just overtly likable. He wants to play the game as the tribe's goofy little brother, and I can see a world where he's just too eager to play and have fun, and he's just doing too much, you know? Similar to how Christian just became the de facto target and couldn't hide his personality. Pre-merge, Jawan probably works with Nate. I mean, pre-season, Jawan was comparing players to MCU characters, which Nate produced the films of, so they'll go together very well. But down the stretch, I just worry he might not have enough people in his corner, and he's going to be too likable for his own good without the social capital to escape the target, and eventually they're going to leave him on the cutting room floor. Early to mid-merger with potential for a deep run. I unfortunately have to go 0 points on this one. Jawan's game was defined by his post-merge flip-flopping with Sage, which I really did not expect out of him. And unfortunately, he did not steal the Uli tribe's heart as I thought he would. He stole Savannah's bag, he stole Rizzo's torch, but not their hearts. Next, let's look at my pick to win Survivor 49, Sophie Segreti. Boy, they had me sweating in those first few episodes where she was basically invisible, but Sophie did emerge post-merge as one of the biggest players of the season, and by Jeff's own admission on the podcast, a major threat to win the game. Here's why I thought Yellow Sophie was gonna collect that check. Sophie, I think, is in that sweet spot to win Survivor where she's threatening, but not overtly so. She's social, but won't be running around the island making a ton of deals. She's a Survivor superfan, but that isn't written on her forehead like it is with other superfans sometimes. She reminds me of like a more outgoing Rachel. There's a little bit of Kyle in here too, and I think that's a good thing for her. She doesn't want to do the journeys. She's open to idols, but she wants to primarily focus on her relationships in the early days. Honestly, I feel like she can vibe with anyone on this tribe. I'm feeling like the 3 women and maybe Jason as a 4th will be the power center here, though I could also see her having a duo with Steven. That's why I like her as a player. It feels like she will be able to get along with everyone. She's very adaptable without it being obvious. I'm kind of feeling a bit of a Michelle-esque social game. Probably not that good, but subtle, unflashy, nuanced, and built on real social bonds. She has great intuition and great social skills. If she has great timing on when to cash in her social capital, she can win Survivor 49. They won't see her coming until it's too late. Am I being too charitable with half a point here? Sophie didn't win, but she was one of a few endgamers who definitely could have. And she was a unanimous boot at Final 7 precisely for that reason. And while it seems like she was out of the Hina dynamics early, she very strongly recovered at the merge by aligning with the power players. Overall, I admit my Sophie prediction was a bit of a mixed bag. She wasn't quite the social dynamo I expected, but I'm pretty satisfied with her overall as my winner pick, and she's one of my better winner picks since starting this channel. So half a point it is. Man, remember when I thought Janine was going to win Survivor 43? Let's move on to our final pre-finale boot, Steven Ramm, who I said was most likely to have too much energy. I was pretty down on Steven pre-season, and I thought he was going to irritate his tribe straight to an early exit. Instead, he proved me wrong and made the final 6, taken out as a consensus frontrunner. Here's why I was not high on Steven before the season began. Welcome back, John Mish. He's like the wholesome Patrick Bolton. He's Eddie Fox with a little bit of game. The golden retriever energy is off the charts. That's a blessing or a curse depending on the tribe. There's no reason Steven should go early. He's going to be a necessary player physically for this tribe. His strategy to play a sort of chill under the radar game should serve him well, and he is planning to have an off-ramp for every game contingency. It's all great on paper, but I don't know. I think Steven's worst enemy is going to be himself. He seems really nice, but he's got this big, boisterous energy. He talks with his hands. He seems constantly at the top of a sugar high with a crash that never comes. If he keeps this up, he's going to be running around the island, talking a mile a minute, and potentially annoying the heck out of everyone he's working with. It could be pre-game excitement, but I am really just getting like Patrick Bolton vibes here, where the constant goofiness without an off switch is fun for a day and a half. If Steven can tone things down, I think there are a lot of allies on this tribe he can work with. Matt, Jason, Sophie. But overall, I'm anticipating his game will kind of fail to launch. How wrong I was. Steven was in the know on his original tribe, had tight allies in MC and Kristina, and seemed very well liked when he wasn't teasing kangaroo metaphors, which never came. Steven undeniably had the golden retriever energy I was talking about, but it was largely to his benefit, not his detriment. No points. And while I'm here, consider this my official unsubscribe from Space Facts. Alrighty, let's move on to our surprise first finale boot and last member of Hina, Kristina Mills, who I said was most likely to be the fan favorite. Preseason, I expected Kristina to be the beating heart of the season, an extremely rootable figure who really resonated with the audience and the other players despite middling gameplay. Well, I definitely got part of that right. Here's what I said. If they still let fans vote on our favorite player of the season, Kristina's 100K check would already be in the mail. Impossible not to love her. She knows her strengths lay in how well she's able to connect with people. And I feel like even if she goes for an advantage, she's just the kind of player who could get caught red-handed with an idol in her hand and wiggle out of it with a smile and a joke. I think the closest analog I can think of for Kristina is Taj, a person who's maybe not the most strategic, not the most physical, but who is just so endearing and likable and relatable she can slot into any alliance. Then poof! It's the end game, and she has major win equity. What Kristina needs is a +1 or 2, her own Steven and JT. She needs to be the schmoozer while someone in the back is crunching the numbers. I'm feeling like her and MC are going to be an instant connection, but I actually think Jason would be the perfect ally for her. Overall, if she's on a bad tribe, I suppose there's a chance she could get the boot early purely on a challenge strength basis, but I'd expect her to be at the center of this tribe and to make a relatively deep run. On the audience side, on the prediction of being the overwhelming fan favorite, I was not right. Though Kristina definitely had her fans. Still, Taj's shoes may have been too big of shoes to fill. But on the gameplay side, I think I got a lot right, including her longevity in the game brought on purely by having good, unthreatening vibes. Still, I think my prediction of her was a pretty mixed bag overall, so let's go half a point. Let's move on to our final four fire-making loser, the Rizgod himself, Rizo Velovic, who I said was most likely to win over the audience. We all collectively groaned at the initial 49 preview when we were introduced to a guy who calls himself Rizgod, but his preseason interviews won me over in a huge way, and I was certain that would carry over into the game. Was I right? You talk about a bad first impression. I, like almost all of you, I'm sure, came into this preseason predisposed towards disliking a guy who called himself the Rizgod during the Survivor 49 preview. And yet I came away from his interviews shocked at how much I liked him. I cannot believe I am saying this about a guy who calls himself Rizgod, but I genuinely admire his grit and determination, which is how he wants to play the game. He wants to play boldly and never give up until his torch is snuffed. He's got this philosophy about the game which I really like, where he says that JT's idol blunder was not a bad move, but basically a bold move that just didn't work out. If that is his philosophy on Survivor, I cannot wait to watch him play. Nothing annoys me more on Survivor than players who play fearful games and just sit on their hands, and Rizgod's game will be anything but. Frankly, I'm surprised I'm so high on Rizo. What I like about him is that he's kind of in on the joke and is surprisingly self-aware. And I think that's going to lend itself to a lot of friends on this tribe. I can really see him and Savannah as a power duo, and if he plays like he says, I think we'll see at least one major power shift in the game brought to you by the Rizgod. Heck, the nickname might even grow on me. Okay, let's not go too far. Rizo came out of this season a huge fan favorite, and for me, he's easily the best version we've ever had of the young, passionate, new era Survivor nerd. And props to Rizo for saying preseason he's going to play boldly and to win, and actually following through. Easy, full point on Rizgod. The nickname even won me over. God help us. Moving on to our finalists, let's take a look at third placer Sage Ahrens-Nichols, who I said was most likely to be the final tribal loser. In Sage, I saw someone who was going to be on the outs, struggle for credibility, but who was scrappy and a big audience favorite. Think Carolyn. I was thinking about Carolyn. Here's what else I said about Sage preseason. As a Washington native, I have to root for our resident Washingtonian, but I am feeling a bit of the Carolyn energy from Sage, maybe some Nora. A big, fun character who struggles to make their case at the end. Now, there is also some Marianne upside here, too. So, either way, you can count on Sage to be a fun character. She leads with her emotions, but she wants to play a really cutthroat game, but without making things personal. Overall, I think this is kind of a rough tribe pull for Sage. I think her and Shannon will be easy allies, but I am feeling that the power will probably center around the three guys and probably Savannah, and Sage could be an early boot just out of bad circumstance if that's the case. On the flip side, I feel like she's one of this tribe's strongest physical players, so they may need her for challenge strength. And being the tribe goofball has its own strengths, but can lead to a struggle for respect even if she's making power plays. She's so unabashedly herself, which is awesome, but it can come off a little kooky, like she told us she saves her pimples in a jar. God, if only Survivor still had luxury items. I need to see the pimple jar. Worst case scenario, one of the first few people out from this tribe. Best case scenario, sitting at final tribal, squeezing the jury for votes that may not come. Wow, I'm never this right. As predicted, Sage was on the bottom of Uli, though it was with Jawan and not Shannon. But other than that, I think I got a lot right here. A big character, emotional, controlled a lot of the post-merge, but still struggled for credibility even when she was controlling the game. If you don't think I deserve a full point after this one, I hope someone dumps Sage's blackhead jar on you. Let's move on to our second placer and final member of the doomed Kella tribe, Sophi Balerdi, who I said was, oh god, most likely to overplay? I wish. Here's why I thought Sophi was going to overplay her way to an early exit, rather than underplay her way to final tribal. Sophi is going to play hard, she's going to play fast, and it's going to catch up to her eventually. Sophi wants meat shields. She specifically mentions Jake preseason as someone she wants to work with, so I'd be surprised if those two aren't working together immediately. She wants the brawn out front so she can be behind the curtain pulling off the big moves. She says she doesn't want an idol unless she's on a losing tribe. I see that getting thrown out the window minute one. I fully expect Sophi to be one of the more active players on this tribe socially, as well as searching for the advantages. Sophi's got a big personality, and it is going to win her friends, but also get her in trouble. She's fun, she's charming, but she's also not afraid to be confrontational and tell it like it is. She kind of reminds me of Danielle, or maybe even Charity from last season. If you piss her off, she will tell you, and she will remember it. That's a double-edged sword in a social game like Survivor, where getting your way requires a lot of social finesse. Sophi's game will start out strong. I think she and Jake will probably be at the center of whatever this tribe's main dynamic is, but I do feel an eagerness to wheel and deal that will get her in trouble down the stretch, and I just don't think her game will be as shrewd as she thinks it is. She will probably get caught scheming one too many times, and she won't see her earn the merge, early post-merge boot coming. Man, I really do think being on Kella just beat Sophi down, because where was this player? This is not the prediction you want to prove me wrong on. Sophie had all these bold, cutthroat vibes preseason, but at every opportunity chose to play it safe rather than make a move. From her teased Alex blindside early on Kella, all the way to her knowledge is power flub. Overall, if you squinted at the start of the season, you could see the player I was talking about, but by the end, Sophie was basically the opposite of everything I said preseason. No points. Finally, let's look at the winner of Survivor 49, a woman who I predicted was going to be the season's final boss instead, Savannah Louie. Obviously, I knew that Savannah was on Survivor 50 when I made this prediction, and I knew her tribe placement pointed to her being the winner of this season. But I chose to do my preseason picks as if I didn't have that information, and for me, trying to be as objective as possible, Savannah's overt winner aura, the big D energy, if you want to call it that, was just too much to ignore, and I figured the other players would notice it too. I guess not. Here's what I said about Savannah before the season began. This is the new era villain we've been waiting for. The moment she became a Survivor diehard was the Johnny Fairplay grandma lie. That speaks for itself. Socially, I have zero concerns about Savannah. She's used to having to move for work, starting over and completely building up a new social circle, then doing it all again. She's the type of player who doesn't even have to go looking for alliances, they'll probably just come to her. She wants all the power in the game, and I would not be surprised if she had it. Frankly, I'd be shocked if she's not an endgamer. You could just pluck her straight out of this season and put her in Micronesia, and she would fit right into the Black Widow Brigade. She's so villains tribe coded, it's insane. I've also seen comparisons to Brenda in Nicaragua, which I also think ring true. She's confident, funny, and will have zero qualms about using people until she has no use for them anymore. On her tribe, I think she'll probably be drawn towards working more with players she feels she can manipulate. I could see her trying to work with maybe more impressionable younger players like Shannon, Rizzo, and Jawan. Savannah will be a power player in this game, but my only fear is that the aura is just a little too strong. She compares herself to Kim Spradlin and Dee, and those are comparisons that just jump off the page. Surely the other players will see that in person, right? Endgame consensus boot, major winner upside. You know what? I'm actually giving myself a full point for Savannah. Cocky, petty, and villainous, Savannah was the hurricane force I envisioned her as, and she showed her skill playing both from the top and the bottom, and used people until she had no more use for them anymore. Savannah very much felt plucked out of Survivor's teen years, or maybe early to mid-20s, in the best way. On a side note, having someone so cutthroat and polarizing win after so many new era winners have been just objectively great people who played nice games and don't have a mean bone in their body is so good for this show. Not to take anything away from your Kyles and your Rachels, whom I love and they certainly have their place on this show, but more Savannahs on Survivor, please. All right, I have tallied up the points, and I have 9 points out of 18 possible. Barely squeaking out my goal here. Overall, I think my most accurate predictions were Sage, MC, and Rizzo, and my biggest misses were Annie, Steven, and Blue Sophie. Like last season, this season was kind of difficult to judge because one tribe getting decimated early on fundamentally changes how everyone in this season plays, and also a lot of people came into this season saying one thing and then doing the polar opposite. To give my very brief thoughts on the cast, I thought this was a pretty good cast overall, but one can't help but wonder what the overall vibe of the cast was like before 2 players got dumped and the alternates were subbed in last second. Hopefully someday we learn more about that. Kella had the most boring tribal dynamics, and we spent by far the most time there in the first quarter of the season, which definitely caused the season to start off slow. And frankly, we've got to find a way to minimize disaster tribes going forward. Post-swap and through the mid-merge was a really fun ride though. Uli versus Hina was a super enjoyable storyline. I just wish the Hina tribe had more game savvy and more development early on. Uli was basically a perfect tribe though. 6 absolute home runs, and easily one of the best of the new era in terms of casting and storyline. Looking ahead to Survivor 50, I have tons of Survivor 50 content leading up to the premiere planned for the new year, as well as reflections and rankings on the new era. But the suggestion box is open, so let me know what you'd like to see in the coming months. Past rankings? Strategic analyses? Top 10 ways to play the Billie Eilish boomerang idol? First, throw it at Mr. Beast's head really, really hard. Got nothing else for you. Hope you all have a safe and happy holiday season. I can't wait to celebrate 50 freaking seasons of Survivor with all of you in the coming months. Until next time, don't get idled out.